Another question that came in, which was, what are some nutrition and training, the question is, can I train, and what would my nutrition look like for muscle growth while limiting fat gain? And I love this question because I get it all the time. And it's something that I really want to educate everybody on, in terms of, like, yes, you can do both. You can gain muscle and you can limit fat gain. And it is inevitable. It is physiologically impossible to not put on fat when you are putting on muscle. Like, you're not just going to down all the protein shakes, and your brain's gonna be like, oh, I guess she doesn't want to limit any fat. Like, your brain's like, excuse me, we need to have a menstrual cycle. We need to put some of this junk in the trunk. Okay. So that being said, it's not all fat. But that doesn't mean that you can just put on muscle, without putting on any fat. So just know that that's part of the equation. I would certainly say that it's easier to focus on each of these at a time, right? So it's easier to focus on being in a build phase, where we know that there's going to be some fat accumulation, but we can also minimize it. And when we want to prioritize fat loss, going into kind of what might be called a cut or a cutting phase. Okay. So it's easier to kind of separate those out. That's actually how I train. So I'm either in a build, which is like most of the time, where I'm eating calories either at maintenance or slightly above maintenance to give my body the building blocks that it needs to put on muscle. And then I will do a cut for a really short period of time. So I just recently did a little cut. I actually totally messed up my timing. I was supposed to be in a cut for 8 weeks, and I only ended up being in a cut for 5, but whatever. So a cut might be like 2 months maximum, right? Because I was trying to just diet down to, we were doing a photo shoot and I just wanted to kind of look a little bit leaner. But then literally like that evening, it's like back into the build, had my little, had my burger, had my, my free meal, if you will, or my whatever meal, like not on the diet, didn't matter. And then kind of got right back at it. So I understand, first of all, I am like you. I also want to limit fat gain. I have a relatively, I probably have a bit of a bigger tolerance than most, just because just because of the amount of muscle that I've put on over the decades of whatever time training. But I think I do know that most women have a very low tolerance for putting on fat. Okay. And I think women in particular are probably petrified, like probably terrified of weight gain of any kind. Even if you're putting on muscle, it's like, oh my God, I just want to be 128 on the scale. Why am I 135? Like, I hear that all the time. So I just want to let you know that I hear you and I love you, and it's okay. And it's okay to be scared. And I'm here to guide you. That's what I'm here to do. So, if you are putting on weight and it's muscle weight, this is going to cause the scale to jump. Like, your muscle is heavy. There isn't any getting around that. It's, it's heavier, denser, more metabolically active than, let's say, adipose tissue is. So if I was, like I mentioned, I like to do this in phases, but first, if we were trying to say, okay, she wants to put on muscle and minimize fat gain. The first thing I want to understand is, how many calories are you consuming? Okay. So, how many calories are you consuming on a daily basis? What is the macro composition of the diet currently? So how much protein are you taking in? How many carbohydrates are you taking in? How much fat, are you taking in? And then if you were a patient of mine, of course, the other thing I would throw in there is like some blood work, and some hormonal testing to kind of establish what your baseline is right now. If the goal, of course, as you've mentioned, is like, how do we put on muscle, limit fat gain? Probably the first thing I'm going to have to do, and I'm just speaking from experience here, is I'm going to have to overcome. There's a very high probability that this woman that you are under eating. You're not eating enough. Okay. Because you're probably petrified of weight gain. So, this is where something like a reverse diet might come in really handy, where in a reverse diet, this is something that we go over in my Estima certification program, where we teach clinicians actually how to run a reverse diet with their clients, because 9 times out of 10 of, when we have these 42 or 48-year-old women, they're like, it doesn't work anymore. I'm on the Peloton 6 days a week and I'm still gaining weight and I still have this belly weight. It was probably true for her that she was able to restrict her calories when she was 20 or 30 and lose weight. And now she's kind of brought her calories down from, let's say, 1,600 to 1,500, and it's kind of whittled down to 14 and 13. And then like I've had some women that have been eating, like 1,100 calories a day. I had one woman recently tell me that she counts, there's 1 gram of carbohydrates in an egg. And I just kind of like had to catch my face. I was like, what do you mean? That's not the first thing I think about when I think of an egg. I think about the albumin, I think about the protein, I think about the fat and the choline and like all the good stuff in the yolk. I don't actually think about, if I'm not putting it into an app, the carbohydrates that are there. But she was concerned about the 1 gram of carbohydrates in her egg. So I see this all the time. And so I'm saying this with love because I really want you as the listener, you are my Betty. I've got your back. Like, we have to get over this idea or being scared of eating food for muscle gain. So very high probability that we are going to take a very, we're taking some under eating behavior and we're going to slowly and methodically, I'm not going from 1,100 to 1,800 overnight, but we're going to very slowly, strategically and methodically start to increase her caloric intake, probably not by much, like 40 to call it 80 calories per week. To slowly start reversing some of that metabolic adaptation that happens when you are chronically calorically restricted. Like when you've been restricting your calories for weeks, and let's just be honest, with some of these women, it's been decades. There are metabolic adaptations that happen, right? Your BMR slows down. You don't you don't expend as much energy during your workouts. Like your body's like trying to conserve as much as it can. So your workouts are less effective. Your digestion really slows down. So there's a lot of GI problems that tend to creep up around that as well. So we slowly and methodically like kind of stoke the fire of the metabolism, so to speak. Usually 40 to 80 calories per week is where I play around with most women. So I'll bring them back up to maintenance. A really easy way to kind of figure out your maintenance is like your ideal weight, let's say, like whatever your ideal weight is, and you multiply that by 15, 16, 17 ish, right? And that kind of gives you a caloric, number. Or you can do like a Harris-Benedict equation or something a bit more intense. But know that these are very imprecise, right? You're going to have to play and you're going to have to be weighing yourself and measuring yourself to see kind of how things are changing with time. So general kind of thinking there is like ideal body weight times, call it 16, or you can run something like the Harris-Benedict equation as well. So we move this woman back up to maintenance calories. Okay. Maintenance calories means that you are net as close to zero. Like your body expends a certain amount of calories every day just to stay alive. So we have moved your caloric consumption up to that maintenance. And then, so there's either the maintenance calories or depending on the woman, I might do like a super itty bitty, teensy weensy, teenily weeny little caloric deficit, 100 calories, maybe maximum, maybe 200. And then there's like, we're basically at maintenance or just like a slight deficit. And then I'm going to design an exercise program. And I want to think about that. Again, thinking about the resistance training being the base. So minimum of 3 days to start, as I've mentioned, ideally working up to 4 days, maybe 5 days of resistance training. And then of course, the next tier, like if we were to think about like, what's the exercise and movement program as a whole, the base is going to be resistance training, 3 to 5 days, depending on the individual. The second sort of tier, if you will, is going to be general movement. So NEAT, non-exercise activity thermogenesis. How many steps are you taking? How much, as if you're watching this on YouTube, you can kind of see my hands flaring up all over the place because, I'm taking a chapter from my Italian family. Like we talk with our hands, right? Lots of Europeans, all with our hands everywhere all the time. And it's like, gosh, are you guys fighting? It's like, no, we're just talking about dinner. Right. So those are kind of spontaneous movements, right? Like walking, gardening, kind of puttering around the kitchen, tidying up, speaking like an Italian, as I'm doing now. I'm kind of course, now I'm exaggerating it for you to see this on YouTube, but my arms are kind of moving, just like spontaneous movement. These little things burn more calories. This is actually kind of the show pony, if you will, of weight loss, because what happens, of course, when you're in a caloric deficit and you're miserable, you don't want to move, right? So the hands don't move, the affect is down, the facial contractions, everything kind of attenuates. But if you're consuming more calories, you're generally happier, and there's a little bit more spontaneous movement that happens. So if it's a step, if it's a step goal, somewhere between, at bare minimum of 2,000 steps a day, at the very minimum up to about 8,000 steps a day is kind of like the goal. And you can work up from there. But 8,000 steps would be kind of where I'm trying to get you to. And then, for me, for example, I have, I don't get a lot of like steps during the day because I'm usually on calls or I'm recording something like this, or, I'm at the desk working. So I have a desk treadmill where I will work at the desk, but I'm walking at a really slow pace, like somewhere between 2 and 3 miles an hour. Again, I have it linked in my Amazon storefront, so I'll make sure that link is available for you if you want to see the one that I use. And then the next sort of tier up. So we have like base of resistance training. Then we have NEAT, or like kind of general movement, non-exercise activity thermogenesis. And then the next piece is cardio. Okay. So a lot of weight training should be somewhere in zone 2, 3. And then I'll add in for this person, if they're wanting to kind of shred, maybe after we've established like a 3 to 5 day training, we have, 8,000 steps happening. Then we're going to say, okay, I will throw in like 1, maybe 2, but it's usually just 1 day of cardio training per week. And it's going to be in that zone 2 range. So when we had Phil Maffetone on the show, he was talking a lot about maximal aerobic capacity. I really like his formula of 180 minus your age. That's how you figure out what your zone 2 is generally. Okay. So me being 44 years young, my zone 2 is approximately 136. Okay. So kind of when my heart rate is around 136, that's about zone 2. Subjectively at 136, I can still, assuming I've done the math there, my God, it'd be so embarrassing if I haven't, if I've been doing it wrong all this time, but I'm pretty sure that's right. 180 minus 44 is 136. But I can still keep a conversation going at 136. Like I'm not huffing and puffing. Like it's no problem for me to continue that. I have a lateral trainer that I find is very easy to stay in that zone 2. I also have a bike that I can kind of set I'm on Zwift, by the way, if anyone wants to be friends with me and we can do some rides together on Zwift, but I'm on Zwift. So I can either like choose the route that I'm doing. I know it's going to be like a flat hill or whatever. And I can kind of set what my output's going to be. So that's another way that you can kind of control it as well. You can do it running too, if you're someone who loves to run, but I find that, for most people, we kind of blast out of zone 2 really, really quickly with a run. So like a brisk walk maybe would be appropriate there as well. So I'll link my conversation with him in the show notes, because he has these other qualifications that I really liked as well. Like if you're if you're sick or you're overtrained or you're on medication, like that number he keeps subtracting that number. So that number keeps getting lower and lower for you to kind of, as a general marker. So I love that. Okay. And the last piece around this question, maybe the most important piece of advice that I'll give is take your damn time. Just be the tortoise, not the hare. To kind of throw reference to, a childhood fable around, taking your time, and slow and steady wins the race. Like putting on muscle takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of hard work. It takes a lot of setbacks, frustration, and dedication. Okay. It doesn't need to be done perfectly. Okay. It just needs to be done. So stop waiting for the perfect time. To my type A, stop waiting for the perfect time. Stop waiting for the perfect plan, for the perfect gym outfit. Just like freaking do it. Just do something, even if it's like a 4 out of 10. Okay. Just figure something out and do it. This is why like these super strict like biohacking principles of only 5 a.m. Like you have to wake up and I'm part of the 5 a.m. club. And if I wake up at 6, I'm a loot. Like none of this, like this is like utter nonsense. Okay. Like what I want you to remember better is better than perfect. Okay. Again, back to the name of the show. Better is better. Better is better than best. Okay. Like it's better is better than perfect. As long as you are doing something like good goddess of Isis, anything, as long as you are doing anything, it's better than nothing. Okay. So stop waiting for everything to be perfect and the perfect day and the perfect motivation, the perfect hair and the perfect, like, it's not going to happen. So just like get dirty, grunt and just like get after it. Okay. And I'll say this is like a little bit of philosophy here. But I think that this is kind of a really good parable for life as a whole, right? Like anything worth having requires work, right? It requires dedication. It requires a surrender to the monotony of doing the same thing day in, day out, whether or not you feel like it. So my advice here is like, stop majoring in the minors. Stop thinking about all the small little details that have to fall into place for you to move forward. Just do it. The supplement stack, the nutrient timing doesn't matter as much as like getting in the gym, getting dirty, making some sex noises, right? While you're lifting those heavy weights and those grunting noises, because ladies, just like with sex, if you haven't made a lot of noises in the gym, you've wasted your time. Okay. So there, I should step off my soapbox and on to the next question.